So it's been a little while since I made one of these videos, so get ready for a ton of more feature suggestions for Premiere Pro from yours truly. You can check out all of my previous videos about this, which are linked in the video description, and keep in mind that most of the features I talk about have not yet made it into the program, even though they're still very relevant. So without any further ado, let's get going. Okay, section 1, inserting clips. When you copy and then paste a clip onto the timeline, it will always go onto the bottommost targeted track. This is actually really annoying, because those are the layers that will most often be already completely full of clips. Instead, pasted clips should go onto the top targeted track by default, not the bottom one. As usual, of course, this should be an optional change to the pasting behavior, not mandatory. Because some people might want it to work this way, I can't imagine why, but they might. We should also have the option to use source patching to dictate the track for pasted clips. To me, this would work even better than using track targeting, because track targeting is used for so many other things. The more things that rely on track targeting to work, the more muddled everything becomes, and the more often you're going to have to be changing that track targeting. So just using the source patching for copy-paste makes a lot of sense as an optional feature. Also, we should have the option to paste clips onto the same track they were copied from. This is how some of the other NLEs work, and it's a behavior that does make a lot of sense. So that's 3 total options for how to control what track your pasted clip is going to go into. Speaking of source patching, the insert and overwrite features need to have the option to not move the playhead forward to the very end of the inserted clip. I almost never want for that to happen because I want to see what I've just inserted, because it's usually B-roll going on top of A-roll, in the context of the rest of the timeline. And in general, I want to have full control over my own playhead. So stop moving it around where you think I might want it to go. Allow me to control my own playhead. Okay, moving on to my apparently favorite subject, keyboard shortcuts. Also on the subject of source patching, we need keyboard shortcuts to be able to change the source patching in a very similar way to how we can change the track targeting with keyboard shortcuts. It would be great to have a keyboard shortcut that would instantly and automatically move all keyframes in the Effect Controls window to stretch onto the very edges of a clip. I don't know about anybody else, but generally I only need to use 2 keyframes for most of the stuff that I do, which tell the object where to begin and where to end. But you can't always create those keyframes at the in and out points of an object on the timeline, because it might have transitions in the way. Also, you can't even see what you're doing on the out point because the program monitor shows you the next frame just after the object disappears. So you have to make your keyframe or keyframes somewhere else on the clip and then manually move it onto the end of the clip later. So with this new feature, you can create your animation however you like and then hit one keyboard shortcut to move those keyframes directly onto the in and out points of the clip that you're working on. You see, I got used to animating from Macromedia Flash, and in Flash, the in and out points literally are the keyframes. They are one and the same. Keep in mind that this feature, which I'll call Move Keyframes to Edges, would be similar to, but nevertheless distinct from, the keyframe stretching feature that I asked for in one of my previous videos. Next feature. On that very same subject, I also had the idea for a concept that I'm going to call sticky keyframes. These special keyframes would expand and contract along with the clip. So if you change the length of a clip on the timeline, all the sticky keyframes inside of that clip would also stretch accordingly rather than remaining stationary as they do now. This is sort of the way that Flash works, because moving the keyframe also moves the in-out point of the object, although it only works that way if your tween is composed of just 2 keyframes, whatever. So anyway, sticky keyframes would just be an optional alternative to normal keyframes, and could perhaps be created by holding the Alt key when you click the keyframe creation button, or, keyboard shortcut that currently doesn't exist. And of course you would need a number of various shortcuts to very easily convert between one and the other. There'd be a toggle, there'd be a straight convert, and so on and so forth. You've got to give a full suite of shortcuts for something like this. Anyway, I don't expect that sticky keyframes will ever be implemented, but I thought I would throw this idea out there anyway. I think it is a good idea. I think all of y'all should discuss it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, on the subject of keyframes and keyboard shortcuts, we still need a shortcut to create keyframes. I will never stop asking for this. And until this is part of the program, I will continue to use it as the prime example of an essential but missing feature in Premiere Pro. It is embarrassing that this does not exist in Premiere. And if you don't believe me, I'd just like for you guys to imagine the outrage that would result if Adobe decided to remove this feature from Flash or After Effects. Yeah, think about that one. Okay, moving on. So we need shortcuts to select any given sequence in the timeline panel. Right now, there's only one hilariously inadequate shortcut for this, which is Shift-3 by default. And all it does is set focus onto the timeline, and then if you keep hitting it, it cycles through all of the sequences contained therein, essentially in a sort of a random order dictated by, I think, the order you put them in, or maybe alphabetical? I don't know. It's weird. So we need a shortcut that will always set the focus onto any given sequence. I understand that it's possible to have multiple timelines, which complicates this a bit, but I'm sure you guys can figure something out. Speaking of insufficient shortcuts, the shortcut for Move Playhead to Cursor is not very good. It works as if you were typing something. So it'll send one letter, wait for a little while, and then it'll rapid fire it. You guys need to modify this so that it moves the playhead onto the cursor at all times and not just when the letter itself is firing according to how Windows usually does things. Does that make sense? I'm not exactly sure what the technical term is to describe this. Furthermore, it would be awesome to be able to chain this behavior of Move Playhead to Cursor to one of the mouse buttons, probably middle click or button 4 or button 5. Or you could just use a regular click but pair it with a Control or a Shift key press. In fact, it would be awesome to be able to use mouse buttons within the keyboard shortcuts menu and pair them with modifier keys. So you could use left or right mouse button to do something. So right now, for example, I have instant rescale chained to my middle mouse button. That's a mod I programmed that you can see in the video description. But anyway, it'd be great to be able to use mouse buttons, possibly combined with modifier keys, in the keyboard shortcuts menu. Okay, next shortcut. We need a deselect all shortcut for the titler. And the reason for this is that absolutely none of your single keyboard shortcuts will work when you have a title box selected, because you need to be able to use your letters and numbers to type stuff in. There is currently no way to exit from a text box using a keyboard shortcut. You have to click your way out. But first, you have to have the selection tool engaged so that you don't accidentally create another text box. But you can't get to the selection tool using A or V or whatever you have it set to, because that'll just type in that letter. That's why I have my selection tool set to V and also Alt-V, so that I can more easily exit from a text box. Anyway, all we need is for the deselect all shortcut to also work on text boxes in the titler, and that would fix all of this. Okay, so I love that we have shortcuts for nudging clips up, down, left, and right on the timeline. I use these shortcuts all the time, and I have them mapped to my numpad for easy access. However, we also need a shortcut to make video nudge up one track while the audio nudges down one track. And of course for the opposite as well, video nudging down while audio nudges up. This would be very similar in concept to the way that dragging clips onto the timeline already works. You see how when I'm dragging this on, it's more of a mirror functionality. Also, we need a way to optionally ensure that nudged clips will not overwrite other clips. So instead of being nudged up one track and overwriting this other clip, the clip would be nudged upwards by 2 tracks automatically, if there's something in the way, in a sort of a non-destructive manner. Again, make this an optional thing because sometimes you do want to overwrite that clip. Oh, and this one is pretty simple, but I think actually quite important. It'd be great to have a keyboard shortcut that just deletes the audio from any given selected clips. So this would be awesome in those cases where someone's filming something and it turns out to be a lot better for B-roll than A-roll, and you just want to delete the audio straight away without messing with it or using Alt and then like the selection tool, which is a pain in the butt, or like delinking and stuff. No. Just one button that would immediately delete the audio from a clip. And finally, we get to the big motherlode of all keyboard shortcut requests, API support, so that we can create our own keyboard shortcuts. For those of you who don't know, I'm talking about the SDK, the Software Development Kit. I downloaded that whole thing, hoping that I would be able to directly mod in some of the shortcuts I've been talking about. But I was disappointed to find out that this was not possible to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and ask for API support for keyboard shortcuts, even though I barely understand what that even means. So this particular request of mine might be completely unreasonable. I really don't know, because I'm not a programmer. But that didn't stop me from at least trying. And I have managed to mod about 12 new features into Adobe Premiere anyway using AutoHotKey, so you'd better believe that if there was API support for keyboard shortcuts, that I would figure out how to make it work. Also, while I'm at it, I might as well just ask for API support for literally everything. I mean, can you imagine if Premiere was as moddable as something like Minecraft? And how amazing it could be? You know, the users could fix literally everything wrong with the program. And if you don't like it, you don't have to download that mod. Oh, it'd be amazing. This will never happen. But I thought I'd just ask for it anyway. Whatever. Okay, now moving on to the next section, which I've entitled Transition Troubles. So, transitions on the timeline are generally a big pain in the butt to work with because they change the context sensitivity of so many tools in such a way that you are explicitly forbidden from modifying either the clip or the transition. Why? There's actually no reason to do this. We should probably never be seeing this little "your tool is crossed out and forbidden" icon. Let's try the rolling edit tool. Check it out. Works perfectly fine on here. I'm going to try it on the transition. Nope, you can't do it on the transition. Nope, it's crossed out. Why is it crossed out? Let's try it on this one. That works really well. If you're really close, even though it says it doesn't work, it'll work. But if you're a little bit further away, it doesn't work. Now, the track select forward tool actually works no matter where you are. Oh, look at that. I'm on top of a transition, and the track select forward tool still works. It works if I'm over here. It works if I'm over here. It works all the time. That's fantastic. Same story with the track select backward tool. That's great. Okay, so let's look at the ripple edit tool. Using it on a normal track. Yes, that works there. Works pretty well here. And if you try it with a transition in the way, it says that it doesn't work. You've got the little crossed out. However, it actually does work, right? It does work if you're close enough. So bravo for having that actually work, even though you say that it doesn't work. Let's try it on this one. Not working at all. It gives you that. If I do it here, it works perfectly. You see that? If you go to this tiny 4-pixel window up here, you actually can do it. It should have that same functionality even when it's down here. What does it matter? Okay, let's try the rate stretch tool. This one actually works really poorly, no matter if there's a transition in the way or not. There's a very narrow range where this will actually work. Oh, see, it says that it's going to work there, but look, you click and it doesn't work. So you try it over here, and that does work. That one works. Let's try this one. Nope. Says that it doesn't work, and it doesn't work. Try these ones. No dice, of course. Why does it not work on top of a transition? It doesn't matter. Just ignore the transition. Blade tool. This one does work on a transition. Good job. Let's try the slip tool. Slipping. That's great. Try it on a transition. Nope. It's not going to work. Let's try the slide tool. This is a very nice tool. Let's try it on a transition. Nope. If there's a transition in the way, it doesn't work. Again, there's no reason for this. Now, the worst one of them all is actually the selection tool, because it has context sensitivity all over the place. Every single tiny little area in here will do something. You see, I can just go all the way through here. This will do something. You see, that's different. This actually doesn't do anything. This will do something. This will do something. This will do something. And clicking here and dragging, that will move the transition, which is great. And then clicking on the side, that'll change the length of the transition, which is great. The trouble is that the context-sensitive zones for all of these actions are so incredibly tiny. So if there was a transitions tool that was dedicated and then didn't have like this function and didn't have this function and didn't have this function that would be great. And then you could just use the transitions tool and it would only do this and this. And also you've got to be careful about the FX badges because, oh look, the selection tool actually works on the FX badge, but not all of them do. Like check this out, the slip tool does not work on top of the FX badge. Look at that, it doesn't work here, it doesn't work there. Most of the place on these clips, the slip tool doesn't work. But the selection tool does. So long story short, all of the context-sensitive areas for these tools need to be looked at again and fixed so that they're not completely ridiculous and so that we can use them when we want to use them. Like I should be able to use this tool right here and I can't. Oh, I've got one more nitpick about transitions. The transitions like dip to white or dip to black should only require media until the halfway point. Currently, two clips that butt up against each other like this should be able to be dip to whiteable. But currently, you get this warning about insufficient media. However, due to the nature of these transitions, you don't actually need any media there. The transition should be able to extend beyond the edge of the clip. You guys already have a graphic for what this looks like on a clip, so it would be pretty easy to implement this, as far as I know. Moving on now to the next section, timeline improvements. Okay, so on the timeline waveforms of your clips, you get these little icons. They're L and R and like channel 1, channel 2, and so on. And these really get in the way, and they make it hard to edit the audio without zooming in and out all the time to avoid them. You see here how they cover up the very beginning of the waveform, and you really can't see if the host has started talking unless you zoom way in. That's really annoying. Give us an option to just get rid of these icons. I don't need to be constantly reminded about the left and right status of my audio tracks. I don't care. Also, before anybody leaves a comment saying that this icon does disappear if you just make the tracks small enough, yes, I know, but then you lose too much resolution on that waveform, and I want to have that resolution so I can see everything even more clearly. Just give me an option to get rid of those icons. They really get in the way. Also, if you want to get really extra fancy with this one, you can even give us a keyboard shortcut to enable and disable these audio icons. Actually, a lot of the optional features that I've talked about could also do with their own optional keyboard shortcut to quickly toggle on and off whatever the option is. It can be quite a pain to have to go all the way into the preferences menu every single time that you want to change something simple like that. Okay, next idea. A ghost clip that shows up on the timeline automatically before you do an insert or an overwrite. This would be very similar to what happens when you drag and drop something from the source monitor onto the timeline, right? So this sort of ghost clip would always be there. It'd be optional and toggleable with a keyboard shortcut, obviously. And it would just be hanging out there on whatever you have track targeted so that you will know exactly where and how large a clip will be before you insert or overwrite that clip. Also, here is one of my better feature suggestions, by the way, so pay attention to this one. There should be a sort of a lagging, I'm going to call it a ghost playhead, that always, 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 always appears at the exact same location on the timeline as the video which is displayed on the program or source monitor at that current moment. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? I'm going to explain it a little bit more because this is really important. When you're scrubbing through the timeline in Premiere, you're scrubbing forward and backward. Sometimes it's just laggy, right? Because the codec is weird or whatever, your computer's slow. It doesn't matter why. But sometimes the image that you see on the program monitor is not the same as where your playhead is currently positioned on top of. You know? It's actually showing video from somewhere else. But there's no indicator on the timeline of where it's showing you that video from, right? So there should really be two playheads. One playhead that you control, and one playhead that shows exactly what part of the video you're actually looking at. Okay? It should have been this way from the beginning, right? And then, of course, when the two playheads match up together, as they often should be, maybe it would be a different color, or otherwise there'd be some other kind of indicator that both playheads are on the same spot. when you are importing footage into Premiere, Premiere kind of locks up while it's doing that, and you get a little loading bar. That's understandable. But if you're dragging out of an Explorer window, it locks up that Explorer window as well, which is really annoying because usually you're trying to go and get a bunch of other clips at the same time so you can, be efficient, and you can't use that window anymore because it's frozen, so you have to go use another window. Why? This is dumb. Let me have control of my Explorer window while you're importing a clip. Is this not possible to fix? Maybe it's a Windows problem. I don't know. Thought I'd throw that one out there as well. Okay, we should have duplicate frame markers for nested sequences. Does that make sense? Do I need to explain any more than that? If you have a nested sequence and you use two of them, there's no duplicate frame markers. And it'd be really nice if there were. Also on the subject of duplicate frame markers, when you add a hold onto a clip, it should not show duplicate frame markers for the rest of the clip. You see, currently it does. It acts as though the clip is continuing to play, and it'll do the duplicate frame markers for all of that duration, but it shouldn't because the clip is paused. The frame marker duplicate should only appear for that single frame. I think that's really important. Also, there should be duplicate frame markers, optionally perhaps, for graphics. Sometimes you use the same graphic twice and you don't really know it because you don't have an option for duplicate frame markers. Perhaps it would work a little bit differently, but there should just be some visual indicator that you've reused a graphic on the timeline if you have done so. Oh, also, there should be the option to turn off duplicate frame markers for disabled clips, right? So if a clip is disabled, it won't show up those duplicate frame markers until you put that option back on. Again, optional. Oh, morph cut does not work on nested sequences. I don't know if that's a bug or a feature, but that's the way that it is. Moving on. Ooh, this one's important. The reuse indicators in the bins. The fact that the little icon of the film stock turns blue. There should be the option to have it only show up for the particular sequence that you currently have selected in the timeline. Okay? As it stands now, and tell me if I'm wrong or if there is an option, please, because I don't quite know. These little icons indicate the use of all objects across all sequences in the project, right? So if you've used one of these things anywhere, it'll show up as blue. And I would really far greatly prefer it if it only showed up for the particular sequence that I have engaged. Because sometimes I have a whole bunch of sequences that use the same media, and I really need to know if I've used something within that particular sequence. Okay, so this is a really important one. Markers are really useful. I use them all the time. They're great. You can even go to the marker menu and select ripple sequence markers, and then it will move the markers around according to how you are ripple trimming all of the clips on the timeline and so on. Okay, this is really important because you want your markers to always be on top of the footage that you're marking, right? However, after I did that, and really this should be on by default, it does not obey the track select forward tool and the track select backward tool. If you select a bunch of footage and then you move it over, the markers do not move with it, which is a disaster. So sometimes your markers are going to be way out of sync because you use the track forward tool and you don't even realize it, right? So get that working. Okay, so using the mouse scroll wheel to scroll through the timeline, the titler, the effects panels, and all the other windows is way, way, way too slow. We need an option to speed this up, okay? We really need that. But guess what? I already discovered a way to fix this using AutoHotKey. So you can watch that video. It's in the description. Go check it out. You're going to be so happy. For everybody who doesn't want to use AutoHotKey and isn't so computer savvy, we still need that option to speed everything up when we're scrolling. Okay, so using Alt and then moving the scroll wheel around to change the zoom in the timeline is a nice idea. But it doesn't work, right? It doesn't zoom in on the cursor as you would assume it is supposed to do. It zooms in somewhere kind of close by. This is terribly broken. Like for example, if you're on the leftmost side of the timeline and you use Alt scroll wheel to try to get there, it doesn't zoom in there. It zooms in on an area that's a little bit to the right. This is terrible. It actually never zooms in where you want. Also, after you use the Alt key to zoom in and out, it requires a click on the timeline before the scroll wheel will return to horizontal timeline scrolling mode. This is also really dumb, and it's yet one more reason why I never zoom in and out this way. And on that subject, using the Control key and then the scroll wheel, so that you can scroll vertically on the timeline, is similarly frustrating and completely broken. Half the time it simply doesn't work, or it'll scroll the audio timeline when you want to scroll a video, or vice versa, or I have no idea what's going on here. I don't know what it's trying to do. It's awful and super broken. This is why I have my timeline fully extended all the time. I never have to scroll up and down because it's miserable. The only way to do it consistently is to use these scroll bars on the right-hand-most side of the timeline, and nothing else works. Okay, so you should not have to individually click on the icons for lock and visibility, right? In Premiere, you have to click, 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 all of them individually if you want to lock all the layers. But in After Effects, you can just do one click and then drag it upwards onto all the other locks, and it'll lock all of them. This is much faster, and this is the way that Premiere should work. Same for track targeting and so on and so forth, by the way. Mute, solo, all of that stuff, it should be a single click and drag to change it. Okay, moving on now to just sort of general improvements for Premiere. There should be a way to add a color to a bins folder icon. Currently, all of them are just gray, which is not great for organization. And if you right-click and go to Label and select a color, nothing happens. It doesn't even seem to affect the color of the clips inside of that folder. So why not just allow the bins themselves to be different colors? This would really, really help with organization and finding stuff. For example, I could always have my graphics in the red folder, and so on. And of course, this should be optional and maybe even toggleable with a keyboard shortcut. Speaking of bins, sometimes you want to scale the bin contents up to one item across. Don't ask me why, but you know, sometimes I want to do it because I got a bunch of pictures in there that have really high res information and really small text and so on, and I need to read them. I want to read them all at once. I don't want to have to click to move them into the source monitor and so on, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter, but I should be able to scale everything to one icon across because I want to, right? There's an arbitrary limit that says I can just do it a certain amount and then no more. But really, there should be no limits. Why is there a limit? Blech. Okay, so for exporting a video, the menu that has the export presets needs to have all of your personal presets located at the top. Currently, it is distributed and organized with the format menu first, which means that if you have presets under H.264 and QuickTime and AVI, that they'll all be in their individual menus, and you have to first go to H.264 and then go to your presets to be able to do something. That's dumb. All of your individual presets should be available under the same menu instantaneously. Does this make sense? I hope it makes sense. Moving on. Okay, last but not least, here's a feature that I already modded into the program, and let me tell you, it is glorious. I call it the one-button instant rescale, or whatever. Basically, the idea is you click or you press down one key or one mouse button, and instantaneously, whatever graphic or clip or whatever it is that is selected, or if there's not one, it'll be automatically selected, will enter the rescaling mode, and you will just be able to move the mouse around to rescale that graphic or clip or whatever. This is magnificent because sometimes those little handle thingies are outside of the program monitor, and so you have to like zoom out to see them. And sometimes you have to click into the effect controls panel, like clicking on the little triangle to unfurl it, and then you got to go and find the scrubbable hot text. No, no, no. This feature does that all automatically for you. It is magnificent. It is glorious. I use it all the time. Basically what my mod does is it'll open the effect controls window and it'll locate that scrubbable hot text and click and drag on the hot text for you. But anyway, this is an awesome feature, definitely something that should exist, and if you want it badly enough, you too can have it. You just gotta learn a bit of AutoHotKey. Okay, that's all the features that I have for now. I'm sure I'll have more later. I keep getting ideas, and please challenge me on any of these features. Please tell me why any of these are not a good idea, and we can have a discussion and stuff. If you want some of these awesome features, I've already programmed a bunch of them myself. You can get that code in AutoHotKey. Yeah, just look in the video description. There'll be links to everything that I've done, links to all my code, and links to the Adobe Wishform, where you can ask Adobe to put this stuff in. Now, to be fair to them, they have reached out to me. They are going to send someone to Linus Media Group, and they'll take a look at all of our systems, take a look at the bugs, ask us what we think of the program and what features and problems we're having. That's going to happen sometime this month, which is awesome, and we will see what happens from there. See you next time.